Welcome. My name is Patrick Tomlinson, and this show is called Reflections. Reflections is a program that seeks to feature interesting individuals with unique insights on matters of history, religion, cultural affairs, the humanities, etc. Reflections is in fulfillment of my studio production course at BronxNet. And I'd just like to take a little time out to thank the management staff and support and services for the professional and proficient way in which they have gone about providing expertise to students like myself. And I'd also like to encourage you, if you have an idea, get involved. Come up to BronxNet, register for a course, and you'll find it interesting, exciting, and you'll meet lots of wonderful people. Now, on to reflections. Reflections will feature mainly individuals who, as I said earlier, will have a unique insight into areas that you, the viewing audience, would find quite interesting. My first guest will be someone who will speak on the history of the West India Regiment when he joined in 1959. So the first guest will be Mr. Walter Waterman, a member of that regiment who joined in 1959. He'll share some very interesting insights. He'll share his time in the regiment, coming from Barbados and traveling to Jamaica to join as a recruit. He'll speak about some of the monumental events in his time there. And I'm sure you'll find what he has to say extremely interesting and accommodating. So stay tuned to Reflections, and I look forward to being with you on this exciting journey. My name is Patrick Tomlinson, and I'm your host for the next couple of minutes or so. Today we have a very, very interesting guest with us who has taken his time out to come and share some very, very interesting snippets of history, which I'm sure you will appreciate. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Walter Waterman, President of the West Indian Ex-Servicemen's and Women's Association, headquartered in Brooklyn, New York. I'd just like to take a few minutes out to mention a brief history of the West India Regiment. The West India Regiment was actually formed in 1795 by ex-African Americans who fought in the American Revolution, and the British decided, they fought on the side of the British and decided to evacuate the United States back to the Caribbean and, and to the United Kingdom. The defense forces of the individual islands were formed from the nucleus of the West India Regiment, and it has a history of over 200 years. So my guest served for a brief period of time in one of those regiments. So I think he'll have some very, very interesting snippets of history to share with you. Welcome, Mr. Waterman.
Good. Thank you for having me.
Earlier you told me that you had joined the Barbados Regiment as far back as I think 1959. Was that?
Correct. That is correct.
Okay, okay. Can you tell me or share with our viewers what motivated you to join the Barbados Regiment?
Well, as a youngster born and grown in Barbados, I came up with four brothers, one sister. And from a modest home, and during the years, I decided to do a number of things. But it seems to me that the word uniform was always focused in my mind. So I started off by joining the church where I used to sing in the church choir in Barbados. Then they formed what was called a church lads brigade. I joined that, which I also joined the church lad brigade band. And as the years went on and getting a little bit older, there were some friends of mine invited me or encouraged me to join the Barbados Regiment, which I did it in 1961 and 1959, which I served for a short period of time because the West India Regiment came about in 1959 and they were recruiting in Barbados in January of 1961. So I decided to try my luck in the Barbados in the West India Regiment, which a major at the time, he encouraged me to join the West India Regiment because in his words, he thought I would have done well in a much larger army. So I took the chance as a youngster and I passed the test.
What was the test like? Simply, briefly.
Well, the test was a basic test, English, Latin, mathematics, geometry, a bit of history, and general knowledge. That was the basic for that time. And there were approximately 2,000 guys that showed up at the recruiting station
Where was this, in Barbados?
in Barbados at St.
Oh.
Anne's Fort, the garrison.
Okay, the garrison Barbados.
Yes, that's correct. And I happened to pass that test and ended up in Jamaica. And I now transformed from the Barbados Regiment to the West India Regiment, which again was a short-lived term of service because in 1962, Jamaica opted to get out of the Federation. So the West India Regiment was disbanded at that time.
Can you just briefly mention what the Federation was about for viewers?
Well, the Federation was basically all the islands in the Caribbean that decided to come together.
As a political unit?
And yes, and as the word speaks for itself, to be federated, to be one.
Okay.
But at the time, with political situations, Jamaica decided to opt out and became an independent country. And after that happened, of course, Trinidad decided to do the same thing. Barbados followed suit. And then at that time in the West India Regiment, all the guys that from the Caribbean that formed that regiment,
Can you mention a few of the
a few
nations?
places was Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, St. Vincent, Grenada, St. Lucia, Dominica, and just a few more. But we were given the option to either, one, stay with the Jamaica Defense Force when that was formed, two, to join the Trinidad Regiment, which will be formed at a later date, join the British Army, or of course, to return to your respective home as a civilian. And in my thinking, I decided that I will take the army for it, and I decided to stay with Jamaica. And I had a wonderful stay in Jamaica.
So you joined the Jamaica Defense Force?
Jamaica Defense Force.
In 1962?
1962.
Okay.
And I had a very good stint in the Jamaica Defense Force. And I have a lot of interesting stories that will take me in the next 48 hours
I can imagine.
to give my audience. Because as a youngster, I tried to do the best on whatever we was doing. And incidentally, when the Jamaica Defense Force was formed, by this time the Federation, the West India Regiment was disbanded.
That is about 1962,
1962,
63.
come up to July.
Okay.
It's interesting to note that at the time in the West India Regiment, there were 3 guys, soldiers from Barbados, and they were the company clerks, and they work in the administrative branch. And I don't know, fortunately or unfortunately for me, I happened to take over that office from these 3 Bajans. So it was said that Echo Company at the time was being run by Bajans.
Okay.
And I had a wonderful stint in that office until some things I noticed started to happen. Some guys that joined the army 3 months after me, that was the West India Regiment that decided to stay in Jamaica. They came up after me, and I had to be turned around calling them sir or sirs, because they started to get promotion. And after a time, I felt that in the company office, the promotion will be passing me, so I decided to go back into the ranks. And then I moved on from Delta Company office to headquarter company office, and I was in various appointments.
Okay. Okay. You were telling me of an interesting event that took place early in your service where you had some political disturbances in Jamaica. Do you want to share a little bit of that with us?
Well, that is going back to the West India Regiment days. They had an uprising in Jamaica, I think 1960, but by that time I was still in Barbados.
Okay.
But when we got to Jamaica in 1961, we still got involved in the mopping up operations because there was a group of people trying to overthrow the Jamaica government, which they were captured, some convicted, and some were executed. But I got the last part of that operation. But the main part of the operation was back actually from 1960.
Okay.
Where you have the last British regiment that was stationed in Jamaica, the Royal Hampshires. They were in the hills, Sligerville, trying to flush these guys out. And it seems to me at that time that they were not so successful because the Hampshires, they lose 1 or 2 of their men. They were shot by these rebels. And then the West India Regiment had to move in and flush these people out and sort the situation out.
Successfully. Very good. You also mentioned to me an interesting event in your time with the Jamaica Defense Force where you went on a walk, a particular walk. Do you want to share some of that?
Yeah, well, that walk, and a lot of people didn't know this, but that walk was taken in 1964.
When you were a young man, young, fit
youngster,
man.
very young,
Okay.
and fit at the time. And then there was a friend of mine by the name of Ashton Cover told me he saw something in the Daily Gleaner,
That's a Jamaican newspaper.
daily newspapers,
Right.
that some cadets walked from Montego Bay to Kingston.
That's over how long?
Well, where we calculated to be about approximately 120 miles from Montego Bay, Barnett Street to Kingston.
Okay.
And that, he asked me if I think we can do this walk because it was said that the cadets did this walk in a bit over 2 days. So I said, well, with a bit of training and given the permission to do it, we should be able to break that at the time.
That record.
Well, I wasn't too sure if it was an official record, but it was said that they walked approximately 2 days and a little bit.
Okay.
Anyway, we spoke to the company commander at the time, and he agreed with us that he will give us time, with one exception, that we will not train on the Army's time. So we had to do our work in the day and did our training for this walk. And it took us about 3-4 months to do this training. And when we were ready, we went back to the company commander and he gave us his blessings, and that was it. We went motor to Montego Bay by train, and then when the right time came, so on a Thursday night at midnight, we started that walk from Montego Bay, Barnett Street to Kingston.
Over what
And
period of time?
the unofficial time from Private Cover and myself was just about 41 and a half hours.
41 and a half. That's
And,
120 miles over 41 and a half hours.
Right. And
Phenomenal.
that walk was basically done non-stop.
Oh, wow.
Somebody asked me sometime, "Well, how did you eat? How did you bathe?" Sorry to say, we did not have a shower from the time we heard the word go until we finished that walk. But we ate along the way. At the end of the walk, it was still feeling nice. I felt I could have gone and do another
one.
120 miles because at that time, like you, the moderator, said I was a bit young at the time. In 1965, we went and did another walk, which was from Savlamar to Kingston. This walk was not timed,
Right.
but this walk was now approximately 165 miles.
165 miles.
Yes, and it was not timed.
Over what period of time? How long did it take you?
Well, it still took us a little bit less than 2 days,
2 days.
but it wasn't really time to give an official time.
I understand.
But the reason why we did that second walk was to do the third and ultimate walk was to go from Negril Point Lighthouse to Morant Point Lighthouse,
Which is
two
from
farthest part from
of the
one end.
island.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But that walk never came off because of operations. Things came up. I think we had a state emergency then,
Okay.
so we had to cancel that one.
Okay. Very good. You told me also of your participation in extracurricular activities, sports. You're on the part of the Garrison Church Committee. Do you want to share a little bit of that with our viewers?
Yeah, well, in this segment here, to talk about all the things I've done and the extra work I've done, again, it will take me a long time to do that, but I will
sure.
just share with the viewers one or two things. Starting off as a company clerk, when I was promoted to sergeant, the order room sergeant, I ended up firstly doing recruiting for the JDF at the time. And then one of my most experiences was to get in that classroom to be instructing students in the clerical fields, because in the battalion, on all officers in the Jamaica Defense Force, and of course all armies, you have what is called company clerks. They do all the paperwork and what have you. And
Records and record keeping.
And, yes, and it was my pride and joy to know that I get in that classroom and teach these people the ramifications of the army, the do's and the don'ts, and it was a joy.
Okay. You also mentioned going on some exchanges with overseas exchanges with other
Yes.
forces.
Yes, I went on a couple of exchanges with the British Army, which, if my memory serves me right, these exchanges started in 1965 between the British Army and the Jamaica Defense Force, which the British Army will send a contingent of men to Jamaica, and the JDF likewise will send a similar amount of men to England to do training.
Okay.
And of course, in England is a colder place than Jamaica. We always have summer. England have winter. And to get the experience to see how the British Army does things in the cold climate and what have you. And for the English guys to experience
Jamaican
some
climate
of the
and weather.
Jamaican climate, because I remember once there was a colonel that went to the cockpit country, and he said in his 26 years of service, the cockpit country in Jamaica was the worst or the ruggedest country he's ever traveled.
Yes, it's very
And it
mountainous
is
terrain.
mountainous terrain. And
You want to tell us
incidentally, I've gone through the whole entire cockpit country
on foot?
on foot.
Okay,
Well, you
very
can't
good.
drive on vehicles. And the interesting thing about cockpit country, when we started, the first exercise we started, there is no compasses helping nobody. You had to go from point A to point B, what we call dead reckoning.
Okay, okay,
And that was a very interesting exercise.
okay. You also mentioned being involved in sports, the Garrison Church as a secretary.
Yeah.
What is it, the Garrison Committee? Do you want to mention that?
Well,
Briefly,
the Garrison Church is the church where the soldiers attend. In fact, they had two churches in camp at one time. The Anglican Church, where here in America they calls it the Episcopal Church. And then you had the Roman Catholic Church, which is the second church in camp. And then we had a third one, but they never had quite have a building of their own. That is for the other people, the people that are not Anglicans or
Like
Episcopal
okay.
or Roman Catholics. They had their own church
Okay.
to attend.
Okay.
And I served on the Garrison Church Committee for a little while. And then, like I said, in my appointments, I held various appointments during my term of service in the JDF, and they're too numerous to mention.
Okay, but you also mentioned you played field hockey
Yes, well,
and rugby.
in sports, I played field hockey, I did cross-country running, played field hockey, and I represented Jamaica at one time in rugby
Wow.
with my
Interesting.
big size.
Yes? What position did you play in rugby?
I played scrum half.
Scrum half?
Scrum
What,
half.
what was that about?
That is a position, if you don't know what you're doing, you might lose a part of your jaw or your face because you're right on that scrummage. For those
Okay.
who ever see rugby, you're right under that crowd with these people
Okay,
kicking.
it's like the nose tackle in American
Right,
football. Okay.
exactly.
Okay, okay, okay. Very good.
Well,
Very
of
good.
course, the rules in football and rugby are slightly different.
Yes.
A lot different.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You are also president, as I had mentioned earlier, of the West Indian Ex-Servicemen's and Women's Association in Brooklyn. Can you tell us a little bit about that organization? What are its aims, its objectives, and its membership?
Well, when I was still in the army in Jamaica, that organization, I understood, was going on for quite some time. So when I got to Jamaica, to America, the West India Regiment, now defunct, there are a group of people in Trinidad decided that they should have reunions, which I thought, when I heard about it, was a good idea. So the first reunion was in Jamaica, which all the guys trained, lived and worked. And then I did not attend that first reunion, which I understood it attracted something like 45 people to that reunion from over the world, except Jamaica. We didn't include the Jamaicans. So after that 11 days reunion, they decided that the next reunion should be in Barbados.
Okay.
So it's every 2 years, 2003, 2005, 2007. And the second one was in Barbados, which I helped organize that one. And we went to Barbados and had a fine time. And on the return to New York from Barbados, I was invited to join this organization, which I now head. And it took me some time to decide. And when I decided and paid up my membership, I walked straight into the presidency.
Okay.
For what reason?
You're not
It's
sure.
hard to explain.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about what are its objectives?
Well, the objective of this West India Ex-Servicemen Association is to keep the guys together, merely together, because as old soldiers, they decided instead of staying home day after day after day, they want to meet on a monthly basis and still having fun. We're having parties and what have you. And also, we try to help some of our members when they're in difficulties and what have you. And unfortunately, we don't want anybody to die, but when the ex-soldiers or retired soldiers pass away, we try to give the family a stipend to help
That's
out with
very
them.
good. That's very good.
But unfortunately, our motto is, together we stand until the last man falls. And it seems to me that I might be the last man falling, standing in that organization, because these guys, most of us are over 50 years and we're dying very fast.
I understand.
Since this year started, I attended 8 funerals, 2 civilians and 6 soldiers. So these guys are going pretty fast.
Okay. Well, we have a few remaining minutes, Mr. Waterman. Is there anything that you'd like to say in a few moments before we close?
Yes, well, quickly, one of my crowning glories, like I said earlier on, is to teach the gentlemen and ladies in the Army laws, rules, and regulations, because we need that type of thing. And one of the things that I love most of that I had some years ago the honor and privilege to speak to officers, that is from second lieutenants to second lieutenant level, not captains and above. And in that time, these lectures or these conversations were very interesting, because one would have thought that officers will know much, much more than a warrant officer. But it turned out that the warrant officers know a lot more than some of the officers, especially my pet subject when it came to the law, instructions, standing orders.
Okay, and you retired as a warrant officer,
Warrant
class
officer,
two, class
yes.
2 of in the
JD,
Jamaica Defense
yeah.
Force. Well, thank you once again, Mr. Waterman, for taking time out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Patrick Thomas for Reflections, and stay tuned for much more and equally interesting programs. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for
very much.
coming, Mr. Waterman.